Wednesday, May 25, 2011. Changing the world. Changing the world. Don't seem possible, does it? But it can be done. I've mused on this on and off for a while and how that could be done. The answer was surprising simple, yet hard to do. But it can be done and it ain't impossible. We spend most of the time working on don't and don't have, or rather that is waste time on that. The problem is major. This is something that I've tried and it seemed to work, at least for me. No way that just one person or group can change the whole of the world by working on someone else. So I looked in the mirror. That dude there seemed to be where to start. He has issues, so that is a great place to start. Imagine, not Lennon's song, but a real image on this. Imagine that you can change the world. Imagine that all you needed to do is start, then maintain you. People would probably think you are nuts, at first. Limit yourself to only one TV show a week. Now imagine that you could get someone else in your home to do so, provided you aren't living at home alone. Imagine that the politics of who does what to whom and who is wrong or right, except crimes of theft and murder, doesn't matter. Example, he/she is got. He/she talks filthy. And the list goes on. How does that affect you? It doesn't unless they are directly in your face. Imagine that you accept them and love them as they are. Imagine going to town or on a trip and taking it easy. A driver wants over in your lane and you let them. You are in your zone. Traffic congested, not a problem. Someone cuts you off or makes a driving error, and you just smile. You are in the zone now. Imagine that you are walking into a store and a man is there with a sign or cup, begging for money. You give him some. Imagine that while you are in that store you see someone who is having a hard time locating something. So you help them. Now imagine that you know or have a neighbor who is having a hard time meeting ends. Yes, even if they are a drunk and their kids and spouse is nice, perhaps they are out of work or maybe you don't know why. But they're hungry. So you have enough money to buy a little something, just for them. Imagine that some person is having a hard time loading their groceries. So you help. Imagine that you go to buy a house and want it paid off early. So you buy a smaller house, something you can pay off in 15 to 20 years. The furniture and electronic items you pay in cash. Imagine that you come to a doorway at the same time, so you allow the other person first or hold the door for the next person. Imagine that you help a person who has a hard time walking. Imagine that you have pretty clothes, but you only buy what you need, create a fashion. Imagine when you decide to get rid of the clothes, you took them already washed and folded to someone who has had a tragedy that needs them, or a church that helps people out, even if you don't go there. No yard sale, just a gift. Imagine that you have more than enough money, and a neighbor goes hungry, so you buy extra to give them. Imagine that you see to it, if you can, that nobody you know goes to be hungry. Imagine that you have a neighbor who needs help. So you help them do whatever it is they are doing. No charge. Imagine that you run into an old person who is lonely, or possibly a kid that is confused. So you take time to listen and maybe speak with that person. Imagine that you take that time since TV is cut off all but one night viewing it. Now imagine that maybe it is your spouse or child that needs a shoulder. Imagine that you have enough, so you take care and make sure if you have more to share that with someone. If someone is in need you are there. Imagine that you yield to animals rather than run over them. They count too. Imagine that you walk in a park or field and look at the beauty of it all. Imagine that you muse the sky at the colors it has. Imagine you take time to be still. Imagine that you do this, even when it is hard to do, but you do it anyway. It gets easier and easier as you do this and already you feel His grace. It's a full size that fills one up, but for someone new, it feels a little funny at first. It isn't one that is all understood, even by those who practice life like this. It's hard to do, but at the same time, the fullness of the day leaves one refreshed, most times. Imagine that after a few months of little to no TV, telling you what the newest thing is that you just can't live without. You no longer need what they are selling in the grand scheme of things for the most part. That keeps you out of debt, or at least no new debt. The biggest thing is, you may just start being content with what you have. Imagine that your actions would change because you no longer know what television tells you to act like through their stereotypes. Imagine not being prejudiced because of this. Prejudice is not a trait, it is learned. So imagine that each person thinks of another person first and themselves last. Imagine that each person sees their own faults and works on them. Imagine that we begin to say we instead of I. What if I didn't think of myself but everyone else first, and everyone else thought like that? The world has had a vision for thousands of years and done just fine. True, there were wars, but at least not every day like we have now. This world is no smaller than it was, yet people act like it is too small for people to be different. It was a world full of amazement with all the different peoples. A world of wonders. A world of mutual respect. Now it gets closer and closer to people being just a clone of what those that rule wish it to be. But just imagine if we had respect for the other person. Just think about if we stopped looking for differences between us and begun looking for common ground. Different is what makes life worth getting up for. Just like opposite ends attract on a magnet, so could the differences be with humans. It could be a better place. It would be a better place. Is it that we are so deep in the forest that we feel so lost that we stand still, or run in circles? But why? Why is it that we have given our power away to the hands of a few, and like puppets, we dangle on their strings of what they prescribe us to act like, feel, and do? The world has lost its way so that we feel so insignificant. I don't know, but maybe we have so many problems that we just don't know where to start. Maybe it is fear of nothingness if we try. But what exactly do we have to lose? We all have the power within us, true power, but just on ourselves, and that is a lot of power. Our power though has limits because it is only true power over ourselves. So though we may not be able to change the world, and there will always be problems that arise, but each keeping in check one person, themselves. Our little corner of the world will change, and maybe we would shine bright enough for another to see this peace and joy. They might just change too. It would make them different than each other, yet the same in joy and peacefulness. So what if I am the last person I think about? If I am the last person I am concerned for? What if I focus on defects in me? What if I care less about me and more for someone else, everyone else, and they for me? Really cared? What if it become live and let live? Certainly, the world would not be a great place because this isn't possible to get 100% cooperation, but it would be better. So we look at this like a huge rock that needs moved. We can't pick it up and move it, it's just too big. It can't stay there, it's in the way. So we chip at it until piece by piece it becomes smaller and eventually is removed. Rather than change the whole of the world, I'll just do my little corner of it.